Well, I'm very excited to present on MCP servers. MCP servers are very new to me. I really love AI a lot. But Nick introduced me to MCP servers, which I didn't realize. Like I keep up to date to some extent with what's going on in AI, and I had heard like vibe coding passing around a lot. And MCP isn't equated with vibe coding, but it certainly has added some nitrous to the gas tanks for vibe coders. And we'll get into that in a little bit. But Nick had shared more like some YouTube videos and documents to read that kind of provided some context. But before I get into it too much, just really quick for the folks that are here by a thumbs up or thumbs down, who here has ever has done some research and knows what an MCP server is? Or thumbs down if you don't. Just so I can kind of tune myself a little bit. All right. Looks like most folks are relatively unaware, which is great. That means that you're here for a good reason and a good time. MCP stands for Model Context Protocol. So AI, if you fiddled with like ChatGPT or Cursor or Claude, these like different types, whether it's a chat window that you're typing information into, and you're kind of interacting with an LLM, and they've got different models, and you're trying to get information, or you're in Cursor and you're trying to code. LLMs fundamentally are kind of stupid. They're only as intelligent as the model, the data that they're trained off of. And so then it is just kind of up to lots and lots of different models being tuned to code bases, or tuned to different languages, or tuned to try and find certain types of graphics or images. So you have these like special use case models that are all tuned to a certain data set, which is great. It does make choosing which model to use a little bit tricky if you're going beyond just the basic chatbots, which are really just like research engines that have a tremendous amount of information and are really good at surfacing answers to basic questions. But we've probably all run into the problem that they're only trained like every 6 to 8 months off new data, because it's just a tremendous amount of data. So they tend to be pretty out of date if you're trying to get information that's up to date or more relevant. For code, matters a little bit less. It doesn't change that much. But if it's a newer or nascent tech stack like Sorbonne, it can be a bit more problematic when there's just not enough information. And even if it was able to keep up to date, you would really need to build a model that was specifically trained off of our code base. And honestly, there's just not enough code. There's not enough code out there. Like, you could train it off of some of our contracts, but give it all the docs, give it all of the contracts. There's still just not enough information to handle new types of content, because it only knows what it knows. And when it tries to create something new, that's when things get a little dicey. So all that to say, a lot of the work in AI has just been generating new models that are more custom tuned, write code better, audit code better, or handle stories or creative writing or what have you. But with the advent of MCP, which is pioneered by Anthropic, which is a company, if you're familiar with OpenAI, they would be competitors, I would say, between OpenAI and Anthropic, writing a lot of AI-related tech. So they came up with this model context protocol, which is essentially a mechanic for injecting superpowers into AI models, allowing them to reach out to alternative data, alternative like prompt templates, and the big one being external tools. And this is incredible because you now essentially have any API that exists out there can tie into an LLM model, and now the LLM really just serves the like textual LLM just serves as the logical glue between other API services. And so the protocol piece of this is the part that's really important. And different folks have tried to like create API services that maybe tie into the LLM, but there wasn't any consensus on what that would look like, which made it hard to tie disparate APIs together. And so what the MCP tries to do is say, everybody use this use this protocol, this syntax. This is how we get external information in. And so long as everybody uses the same thing, now different APIs can talk to each other. And the LLM just kind of serves as this English logistic logical glue that ties these things together. which is amazing. If you look, I think it's awesome MCP. I think there's one here for. So there's a bunch of these MCPs that people have made that tie different code bases together, that tie note-taking applications together. You've got some for like Google Sheets, just loads and loads of them. And I don't know if this was the one that had, Coinbase has one, a base MCP, where you can interact with a token contract, which is super cool. The big issue with MCP servers is that they're actually quite janky to stand up. Most of them, basically all of them, up until the Cloudflare release or maybe just a week ago, were local servers. So you were intended to stand these up on your local machine and then point your cursor or Claude at this URL, and then you could interact with it. With the big reason being that MCP hadn't created a standard for like authorization yet. And so if you wanted to, for example, connect your Coinbase account, you would have all of those secrets stored in an environment file, and it would be specific to you. So you couldn't create like a general purpose. Everybody used the same coinbase.com/MCP server, and they'll handle your secrets, slowly. You'll upload them over time or something like that. There wasn't any mechanic for doing that. And so all of these servers were local, which basically meant there wasn't a lot of external access. Probably one of the reasons that, two reasons that nobody's really, a large portion of developers or even just users are not using MCPs is because of that friction, and because it's also very new. But then Cloudflare released this, and it's not unique to Cloudflare, but their tech stack is really well suited to standing up these serverless servers, or these remote. Instead of local, it's a remote model context protocol servers, where you can stand up a server that everyone can use, and then it uses OAuth through any number of third-party service providers that support OAuth, where a user can log in and kind of maintain an account with that server, which can then store memory as far as like what's my user account, what's my token, where are my secrets, basically like logging in to a site, but then you're interacting through that MCP protocol, that MCP, to interact with whatever API you've connected to. So, for example, in the base model, instead of storing this locally, you would stand up a remote MCP server. You would OAuth with like Coinbase or something, and then they would have access through that server to the secrets necessary to deploy tokens or trade on their platform. So all of this is happening pretty quick. You can see the date on this is 3/25, so not long ago. But as a big Cloudflare fan, I immediately jumped on this, and since MCPs were something I was looking into, was really interested in standing one of these up and seeing what it looked like. And it's amazing. It's so much fun to build these, and it's really, really simple to build these too. With Cloudflare, they've got some really good example code. If you go, I think it's GitHub Cloudflare AI. They've got some a demos directory that has a bunch of AI related servers that you can stand up. One of those being this one that I have cloned and fiddled with, the remote MCP GitHub OAuth. So that's what we're going to look at in our code today. So this is basically just a clone of that directory, which I've modified a little bit, and then I modified a little bit in this index file. And then I modified a ton to make it really Stellar specific. And I want to make sure we have some time to actually look at the Stellar stuff that I've been doing, because I'm very, very excited about it. But let's just start. The server itself is really simple. Cloudflare has handled a lot of this through the agents MCP. This actually might be a model context protocol service or repo. I can't remember. But they basically work pretty closely with Anthropic, actually. So they work together on these. And then some of the other included code is just for the OAuth stuff with GitHub. So I'm going to go ahead. So with Cloudflare, they have a really good both dev and then obviously a live environment, but they've got a really good dev environment. So I'm just going to run pnpm run dev to stand up this server. And I'm going to go ahead and caveat this with, this is all quite new. Nothing I don't think has really reached a stable release yet. And so what you will probably find as we go through these demos, I will have to restart this server quite a bit. Some of that could be my mistakes. I doubt it because I haven't done a whole lot. And more it's issues with the actual MCP servers and when it encounters errors and how it handles that and stuff like that. I think some of the actual interfaces don't interact with remote servers that well. There's a lot of it's new. It works pretty well, but every now and then I do have to restart the server. So I'm going to do if you guys fiddle with MCP servers, they store a lot of the auth stuff. If you're fiddling with the OAuth stuff, and this took me a while to find, they store it, all of the auth information of like session tokens and stuff inside this MCP auth directory, inside your user directory. So if you're encountering a bunch of errors, we may need to delete this MCP auth. Again, there's a lot of different moving parts here, and I feel like the different teams are trying to figure out the best way to connect these things together. So we get to do some live debugging here. I'm gonna restart this one, restart that one. And I think if I use Claude, it would probably work without too much trouble, but yeah. So we've got this one tool. Claude's working a lot better than that other one. I don't know what they did to that one, but you can see when you connect. So let me open up if you go to settings on Claude and go to developer, there's the MCP servers you have connected. I'm going to edit the configuration file, which we'll go right here, and you can see I'm just connecting through to this 8787. There's this remote MCP tool that you can use to make that connection, because MCP itself is still working on finalizing the OAuth standard. So there's this intermediary tool that we're using to actually stand up those endpoints. So let me go back to Claude. So when you save that, you can then refresh, and it should show you any tools that you've associated with your MCP, which is what we're going to look at next. So really, inside of this MCP server, the only thing you really have to fiddle with, depending on how you connect your OAuth and if you have to fiddle with that, is this init function inside your MCP agent. And this is where you're going to do all the server stuff. So you've got your MCP server, you take that server, and then begin to add tools to it. So like I said, you can attach prompt templates, resources, which is like static content that may be useful, and tools, which are the actions that the MCP server can take. In this case, I'm just going to do a really basic one called add, give it a description to help the LLM know when it's time to use this tool, when I'm adding two numbers together. It'll take two arguments. It uses Zod to give you better information around what type is expected in the arguments. I'm going to have an A and a B argument. The first one is just the first number and the second number. Then you've got the actual action after the arguments. The action is the function that it calls with those arguments as a parameter, which you can then do something with. In my case, I'm just going to add them together and return the response. So things like type, text, and the text output, that's part of the protocol piece that every API has to be consistent with in order to be, considered MCP compatible or whatever. So once we've got that and we've refreshed, added it, then we can begin to use it. So I could do something like, using the tools that you have available to you, add 5 and 10. I don't know why I did 5 as a word and 10 as a number. We'll allow, because it's secure or something, 5 and 10 equals 15. So we just used the MCP server. You can kind of see it called it right there. That's the format that it took, the A and the B arguments, 5 and 10, added them up, we get 15. So that's useless, but it's a good example of one of the biggest problems we've had of like, if you want to use AI to like do very specific stuff, it's always a little bit janky to make sure the arguments are correct and that it doesn't hallucinate. And what MCP gives us is a really structured way to use tools and always have the exact inputs and outputs that we expect. So you just tie that back to whatever API you're connecting to. Let's use another example. So this kind of ties in, Alex, a little bit what you were talking about. Since I have connected with GitHub, I do have this access token that GitHub has given me when I linked up with GitHub through that OAuth connection. So I can do things like get my users and get some information about that. So I'm going to save this, which should give me a new tool called User Info OctoKit. I'm going to refresh this. We can see I've got the one. If I make this, yeah, okay, that's way better, huh? If I refresh this, sometimes Claude does not like to refresh, but I'm going to give it a best shot. Worst case, I'll just close it and open it back up again. And now it's got two tools available to it. One is that user info and one is add. So I could say, using the tools you have available to you, get my GitHub information. And now I'm going to get to dox myself with all of my GitHub information. We'll allow for this chat. It'll give me the response, which is just this text formatted blob. But what's nice about the LLM is it can format that and give me a nice output list of different information from my my GitHub account. So then we could combine that. One of the things that's super cool, not only do you have like multiple tools on an MCP server, you can obviously connect many different MCP servers, and then they can begin to interact with each other, which is really where the superpower starts to come in. You start to see this is less about the LLM and more about the MCP servers and the fact that the LLM can tie those things together. Thank you very much. If you can now take the public repositories and add it together with my private repositories, what's the total number of repositories that I have in my account? So this is just tying two of those tools together. Oh, it didn't actually use the tool. It just used the LLM because basic math is basic. No, you silly. Use the add tool to add those things together. You're right. I know I'm right. Allow for this chat, and it will use the add tool to actually add those things together. So that's super cool and basic. But it does give you some idea of, now we could add in some Google Sheets and have a big CSV that we could start to interact with quite easily. And not in some sort of hope they get it right sort of way. It's this really structured, it's always going to follow the same argument patterns, the same type patterns that it expects, and it's going to have a consistent output that then you can implement wherever else it needs to go, whether it's to an actual LLM output or to move into another request, another MCP request. Okay, that's all. I hope that you're starting to see like how this is powerful, where you start to tie in other APIs, and instead of having to like pull them together into your own services or find a way, like wait until ChatGPT opens up one of their plugins or something, that you can really easily start to build out these things yourself. Like you don't have to wait. It just ties into the basics of, in this case, the OctoKit API, and you can start making use of those things and tying them together inside of your, in this case, Claude, but could also be Cursor or any other LLM that supports this. But let's move on to a far more complex example, and this is what I've been working on. And if you thought it was janky before, just wait until you get to code that I've written in the last 30 minutes. Okay, so this one's really Stellar specific. And this is going to start to tie in smart wallets, the LaunchTube service that we have, and some of the Open Zeppelin contracts that have been getting written, some really cool stuff. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to restart my server just to be safe, because I've completely changed the underlying index file. And we should see a bunch of new tools showing up. Let me try and refresh. Okay, so now we've got some new tools: deploy token, contract address, getting wallets, etc., etc. I'm also going to start a new chat. Okay, so I'm going to kind of just start walking through some of these items, and I'm going to be using to manage my smart wallet address. I have another service, maybe some of you have heard of before, called SuperPeach, which is a smart wallet interface smart wallet, I guess, for that I use when I'm working on smart wallets, because we don't have ecosystem support yet for this, so I've kind of had to jerry rig my own. But this is the address for it. So one thing that I want to do is, since we have OAuth, I'm going to pull this off the screen for now. Since we have access to OAuth, I can kind of use that as kind of the idea that who knows who's using this service, but I want to have one that's specific to me. So it'll connect to my OAuth connection or my KalePale GitHub account and start saving information to that user for this MCP, this remote MCP server. So the first thing I want to do is use the tool set wallet to configure this account that I'm using to know that that's the wallet that I'm using. So when I go and do other smart wallet things, it'll be using that as the base wallet. Set up, or let's do save my wallet address to my account. And you never, I mean, again, it's the LLM, so you hope it gets it right. Sets to set wallet, that's correct. Successfully saved. Wallet address is set to that. Now I can do, would you mind quickly getting that address just to confirm that that is the correct address that's been saved? So it should call the get wallet function now. Okay, so we've set the address to my Super Peach address. So now I've got the smart wallet set. So now I want to launch a brand new meme token using that address as like the admin. And that will use this deploy token. So there's a Open Zeppelin contract for a non-fungible token that I'll use to deploy a brand new token. So I'm gonna, you may have seen the demo that I did a few days ago. Looking up local news in Knoxville, Tennessee, with a focus on meme-worthy news. Create a brand new meme token for me and launch it. So hopefully, Claude does have access to the wider internet, so hopefully it'll find us some interesting meme-worthy news. Apparently there's a new tiger in our zoo, so it's going to make us Knox Tiger. And with any luck, it will deploy that. Looks like it decided it wanted to go ahead and set that contract address for me, which is great. So I think when this token was deployed, it was successful. That's very good. And then went ahead and saved that contract for me. Uses emojis. Interesting. It saved that address for me. I actually I want to save this address. I want to add a new signer. So the big problem with this is going to be if I want to do anything with this token, aside from deploying it, I'm going to need to sign for those invocations. So there'll need to be like transaction review or something, or maybe it'll spit out XDR that I can then take over somewhere else. I don't know. Claude doesn't have a wallet integration that can pop up. So there is some really good news here, though, because of the fact that we're using smart wallets. Essentially what we can do is open this link over to Super Peach, which will add a brand new signer to our smart wallet that our MCP will be able to use to sign for transactions that are coming from this contract. That's what this signer limits piece means. Essentially, it's adding a new G address as a signer, and this G address lives on the MCP for my account. But then it limits itself. So instead of basically giving the MCP a secret key to do anything with my account, and hopefully it does the right thing, and since we're using composable authentication with the smart wallets, and we're using my smart wallet interface that I've built, I can add new signers, but also assign limits to those things. In this case, the limit is, you get a key, but the only thing that it's allowed to do is sign for transactions that are coming from this new meme token. So I'm going to add that signer to my smart wallet account. Do a fingerprint scan real quick. Signer added. I think if we go back to the homepage for Super Peach, you'll see a couple of the signers that have been added to my account. And that's all we'll need to do, I think, hopefully, with Super Peach. And we should have the ability now, since we've got the token tracked. This is the piece that gets really, really interesting, because we've added the new signer. We've tracked the contract. It happened. I don't love that it happened automatically, because I kind of wanted to showcase this. But when you track, you're basically saying, hey, my account, my OAuth enabled account, on my account, save this as one of the contracts that I want to interact with. And then also add a signer for it, which is what I just did. That's what this instructions and link component is, and how it grabbed and knew to add that. But what's really, really cool about the way that we've built Sorbonne with the spec being actually in the contract code, when this gets added, and now it has, inside the remote MCP server, when I refresh, it's going to load up any contract that I've saved and actually give me dynamically a custom set of tools that are specific to that contract. So you'll see this Nox Tiger now has all of the functions that it has available, along with all of the contextual documentation for each of those functions, which the LLM can now use to know exactly what I'm trying to do when I talk to it. And because it has the signing key that's enabled, I won't have to review or sign anything. So really quick, I think this is the contract address. Let me quickly pull up Freighter, just so that we can load in a new asset. This is probably really tiny, but I don't think Freighter allows me to make that bigger. Triple dots, manage assets, add an asset, add manually. The new contract address, we should see Nox Tiger. I'll add that asset. There we go. We have 0. So what we want to do is transfer, I guess, some Nox Tiger from my smart wallet over to this G address. And I'm going to try and use this to do that. Transfer some of this token over to this. Let's transfer, some is not very specific. Let's transfer 10 of this token over to that G address. And let's see what happens. With any luck, it'll try and transfer 10 of that over. It has the from address, the to address, the from address being my contract account, the to being that G address. I'm going to allow. It's going to try and transfer 10, and it knows all of these arguments without me having to tell it anything, because the spec is baked right into the WebAssembly code. It was successful. 10 Tiger should have been transferred from that smart wallet over to that G address. So if we were to look at this, let's see, how do we refresh? Maybe if I close and open back up again. We have 10 Tiger in our Freighter wallet now. If I go and I look at this over on Stellar Expert, on the testnet, oh my goodness. There we go. We should see, let me make this a little bit larger. We should see that transfer happening from the smart wallet to the G address for that 10 Tiger, which is pretty cool. So didn't have to sign anything, didn't have to review anything, no contract account ever needed to meddle with XLM, and nothing's hard-coded. It's all dynamic based on the saved account. I could also put in I could start tracking other contract addresses just really quickly. I can demonstrate that. I mean, you can also look up, right, things like, so at this point, what's the total supply of the Tiger meme token? It'll look up total supply, because it has all the information for which method it should use for that coming from the instructions. It formats it. It formats this amount off of this JSON piece, because JSON doesn't like big ints, so you have to convert it into some sort of JSON format. So it's actually using, I think Lee or somebody built this Stellar XDR JSON, which is like a WebAssembly. It runs Rust, but Cloudflare supports WebAssembly, so you can run this right inside the server here to decode, to guess, to do all this stuff with XDR, which is amazing, and then it gives you a nice output and can tell you all the information about it because the LLM knows what this probably means with an I-128 high-low. If we go over to blend really quick, now this one I think highlights for me a little bit of an issue that we currently have in the ecosystem. Let's look at deployments, the testnet deployments. They're currently working on their V2 contract. So if I go back to my LLM and I say, please track this contract as well, it should go ahead and start tracking that contract address. Additional contract, I forgot to give it a name. If I need to assign anything for it, I'm going to skip this component. I don't want to do any signing for it. I just want to look at the interface. So it should have saved it. So when I refresh, I should get more than 21 now. I do. I get all of the functions that come from what apparently is additional contract. I should have called it blend v2. But you'll notice that there's no documentation for any of these functions. And that's because Blend has not added any documentation for all of these functions, as opposed to our own, or I guess the Open Zeppelin contracts have comments which give you all the information for what each one of those things do and the arguments that they take. So we'll want to start talking to our ecosystem a little bit more about documenting their code. This is good both for, obviously, for LLM models like this, but it's really good for clients as well. Like this documentation is coming from inside here. You loop over all of the contracts. You get the contract IDs for those things. You load that into a Stellar client from that WebAssembly file. And then you grab each individual function within that file because that will become the function that you can call. And then you'll notice it has this input to doc to string. And there are many, many, many cases where their contracts are being uploaded with no documentation, which will make it hard both for models like this to make use of the functions on a contract, but it also makes it hard for clients, right? These things are useful for multiple reasons, right? If I go look at this contract that I've spun up and I guess it's not a specific one yet, but if it were to load up like the blend contract and you can see all the methods that it has on it, like claim or delete auction or do a flash loan, it won't have any documentation on what types it accepts when you're like in TypeScript trying to look at that. So we'll want to encourage our ecosystem to spend a little bit more time writing out documentation for each of these things. That's kind of all there is to it. I'm going to clean this up a little bit. I'll get it up on GitHub for folks to be able to play with. But the combination of a remote server that you can then share, right? This is in a condition, we'll want things to be a little bit more stable, but it's in a condition where you could share this with the world. And basically when you deploy it, you just have a URL, pnpm run deploy, you give that URL to the world and say, when you're in Claude or Cursor, just add this MCP server. They'll log in, it'll send them over to GitHub to authenticate. And then as they're saving information about their account, it all goes into an account specific to them. And it's also worth noting, like, there's not secret keys that are stored because this is all non-custodial. If there is a secret key that's stored, right, it was locked to only having access to a specific account. You could lock that down even further by using something like a policy signer to only interact with specific functions on a contract, or only interacting with, if it's trying to do a transfer, it can only be a certain amount or only certain assets. But it's really nice to not have to fiddle with reviewing transactions or being shipped all over the place when stuff's needing to get signed. You can stay right inside of the context that you're in. All right, fantastic. Well, kind of the next steps for me, other than just kind of cleaning up some of this code, is I want to do a couple more videos, some documentation on this. I mean, it's actually really cool that you can basically pull in any contract ID and dynamically build a client from it with full documentation, and then just basically build up a dynamic collection of MCP tools that can be used for each individual contract. There's a little bit of work that maybe we can do to like try and stub in documentation if it's missing. Sometimes the method name itself is kind of sufficient. And then I also want to add in additional connection points between like the Super Peach side or the wallet side, and how signatures or signing keys get created or managed. But again, like this particular connection now exists inside of my Super Peach. So if at any point I want to disconnect it, I can just go to Super Peach and delete that signer, and very similar to OAuth. You've got connected clients, which are now just signers that you can manage from your wallet side, which is pretty cool. Go forth and MCP great things.